Hello, welcome. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Our Nature Stories, our traveling nature journal. My name is Daniel, Librarian Daniel, and I'm super excited to be here this week to take part in this project. So far, I've really enjoyed watching Librarian Jen, Librarian Grace, and Librarian Catherine all take turns experiencing the natural world that surrounds them and documenting that in a way that we can all enjoy and share together. I'm personally very excited to be a part of this and to put my own spin on our shared nature journal. So thank you so much for joining and coming along on this ride with us and hopefully making your own nature journal with us at home. I want to start by providing an acknowledgement of the indigenous land that we occupy here in Los Gatos. Today I'm recording this program, gathering items from and living in occupied Muekma and Amah Mutsun Ohlone land. I'm acknowledging this because the Ohlone, who have lived here for thousands of years before the arrival of the Spanish and the mission system, they are the ancestral caretakers of this land and continue to fight for both federal recognition as well as better practices for caring for our local environment. So I really think that's important for us to acknowledge, and we're going to jump in. Today I received this beautiful package from Librarian Catherine, addressed to Librarian Daniel, with a nice little flower on it, and I'm super excited to open it. I love presents. So let's go ahead and see what is in store for me. This is really beautiful. So, if you want, let me get a little closer and we can share this experience, just like story time. Now, Librarian Catherine left me quite a letter. And just so we can see and remember everything that she was able to put together. Very beautiful. So she's written me a letter, and I do want to start with this really great quote that she provided. "What is a weed? A plant whose virtues have not yet been discovered." Ralph Waldo Emerson. So I'm going to read this letter from Catherine. See what she would like me to do this week. Dear Daniel, nature is the slowing down and tuning in. Quiet observation, pondering, and creation are inextricably linked to art and literature. To me. I am not an artist in a traditional sense, but am greatly inspired by all that is around me, and through that observation I am moved to create in an effort to synthesize and share my experience and my communion with the natural world and its beauty. Grace's challenge to me was to tell the story of the weed. For me, that was to consider the cast-off beauty of not wanted plants, and that I have taken special effort to practice the art of seeing on my walk, to really observe the plants and flowers around me, perhaps right underfoot. Realizing that weeds and wildflowers are strong, resilient, and can grow anywhere. Amazing. My challenge for you, Librarian Daniel, is to consider the rich history of your backyard through nature. As you walk, observe the plants and insects you find, and note any other discoveries that inspire you. Explore this idea in whatever way resonates with you, and make it your own. Happy journaling, friend. Sincerely, Catherine. Well, they have left me a lot of space to work with in here, and that was dangerous of them because I'm really going to run with it. Thinking about history, and it is one of my passions, I'm very passionate about it. I think that a great way to focus on history is to focus on trees. They are the plants that live the longest, and Los Gatos has thousands of beautiful old trees throughout town that you can see without even having to go to a park, that you can really experience just walking around downtown. So I know that the more we learn about the trees and natural landmarks in our neighborhoods, the closer that we can get with to the history of our town, of our cities, of our local areas. And so I'm going to do that. I'm going to go out on a nature walk now. I'm going to pay special mind to the ways that nature kind of affects history. I'm going to see what I can bring back, and we'll go from there. Hello, I am back. I went on a really nice walk through quite a good walk. I went a mile or so walking through the neighborhoods in Los Gatos from downtown. So I'm excited to show you what I did and what I found. I'm gonna go ahead and pull up that video if I can here so you can see everything that I have laid out. Alrighty, let me fight here with technology. Great, so you can see that I did quite a bit of work here. So, first I wanted to mention that I wanted to make as little impact as possible. It's really important that as we go out, especially if we're collecting, that we don't take part in those practices that are especially damaging to the environment. So everything that I have here, I either took a picture of or I collected from the ground. So these were items that had already fallen from trees or different plants that I took from the ground, including these little berries. So just keep that in mind if you're gathering things for your nature journal, to be really mindful of what you collect, how much you collect, and ask yourself, is this something that I need to have, and would it affect the plant or the local environment if I took it? Because not everything is for our taking. Now, a lot of these were maybe on the street or on sidewalks. They had fallen directly from the trees that I have in these pictures. So I'm just going to walk through what I have here, and we can kind of work through that, and we'll start placing things in the journal. So to start, I found quite a few berries. I was really excited to find out how many berries there are in Los Gatos. Now, there are two types. I do not know what type of berry this is. It's on a big green bush. I've got a picture of it on my phone that I'll show you shortly. I don't know the type of berry, but I'm excited to learn. Maybe you'll be able to tell me. I also found a lot of blackberries. And again, these were touching the ground. Go ahead and grab them, potentially already touched by animals. So it was very exciting to learn that there are blackberries all over Los Gatos. I've also got some oak branch. So these are oak leaves. I've done quite a bit of reading on oak trees, but I'm still very bad at identifying them. They're either a white oak or some sort of live oak. I know we have a lot of coast live oaks here in Los Gatos as well as white oaks, so it could be either. Maybe you'll be able to tell me. I gathered a few leaves. They were all kind of in a pile on the ground and had fallen, and they're already brittle, so I didn't actually have to dry them or press them. But I grabbed them in different stages of decay because I thought it would be nice to show that process. And I found this little tip of one of the nuts that was falling off the tree. It looks like a squirrel probably already ate the nut off of that. And there's also this chunk of bark, and I thought it was really interesting. I might end up just drawing it because I'm not sure how to get it into the journal, but it had some moss on it, which I found really interesting. And there were little bugs crawling on that too. And I also noticed this lichen that I didn't know would grow over here. So I'm excited to play with that also. Some wires. Let me see if I can focus here. Yeah. See how, the power lines cross all over it. So these trees have been here for a very long time and have grown around some of the things that humans have put in their way. This is a fascinating plant, and maybe you've seen it walking down the street if you've been over off of Santa Cruz Avenue, a couple blocks. There's all these very beautiful century plants, and those are very large types of either agave or other large succulents. And this is, trust me, about the size of me. This plant is larger than I am as a human. I found this tree at a distance. You know, if you walk around the neighborhoods, you really see these towering trees all over the place. And I restrained myself most of the time, but I couldn't help but notice this particular tree because I couldn't identify it. Let me see if I can focus this. I was unable to identify which type of tree this was. I thought at first maybe some sort of cypress, but it was quite large for that. It didn't seem like an oak. And it had these two little pine cones that I found in the street underneath of it, in different levels of decay there also. So I was really fascinated to find some of these, the things that have fallen from these trees. Maybe they've been knocked down by different critters or what have you. I'm also really obsessed with figuring out what type of tree this comes from. I have a picture on my phone that I can show as I'm putting this in or drawing this into the journal, but I see it everywhere. It seems like some sort of pine, especially given this cone that it has, but that blue color really throws me. So I still haven't been able to identify it. If you know, please tell me. I love this redwood, and I'll talk more about it as I put it into the book, but it's very old. It has a sign on it near Bachman Park. It was actually planted by the Bachman that the street is named after in 1884. And it's just incredible how many hundreds of years this tree is old. So I thought it was really important to include that with our scope of history. I took two very poor photos of this large tree, which I believe I've identified and forgotten already, that are out behind St. Luke's Church, out near the entrance of the Los Gatos Creek Trail. And I couldn't get a good picture of it at all because of the lighting. And finally, I have this photo of the palm tree in front of Main Street Burger. You've probably seen it, and maybe you've seen it and not even noticed it. But I do know a bit of the history of this palm tree, which I'm excited to share. So these are pieces of a redwood that I found in the park in Town Plaza. And yeah, so beyond that, I also took several photos on my phone that I can use for drawing. I can show you, I encountered some bees. So I was actually able to really capture some beautiful moments with some bees on these wildflowers, these lupins. And I also found some poppies growing in the part next to the street on the other side of the sidewalk. This is the bush with the berries. And this is that tree that I cannot identify. So if you know what type of tree this is, please help me. I believe it's some sort of pine, but it grows differently than other pines. It has a lot of sprouting branches. These were the blackberry bushes because I'd like to draw the blackberry, and more pictures of the redwood and some other interesting trees in the neighborhood. So I really kept my eyes open as I was walking around town. I think that it's really important for us to really pay attention to the nature that's in our actual neighborhoods. I think there can a lot of times be too much focus on getting into parks. Parks aren't always accessible to everyone. However, oftentimes our own neighborhoods are the most accessible place where we feel the safest for a lot of reasons that I'll keep talking about today. So I really enjoyed walking around my neighborhood,
walking around a neighborhood a lot of us who are watching this share, just to show you all of the cool nature that is literally in our backyards that we share with each other. So I think it's time to start journaling. So let me go ahead and move some of this stuff to the side, and we're gonna go ahead and get started. All right, now look at this beautiful blank slate that they've given me. I'm really excited to jump in, and I'm a little bit nervous on where to start. So go ahead and help me decide. I think if we're going to talk about history and we're going to talk about how old the things are here, I believe the oldest tree that I saw was this redwood. And one more time, this redwood has a sign on it, a handmade sign that says that it was planted by B.F. Bachman in 1884. It's right at the corner of Bachman Avenue and Apricot Lane, right next to Bachman Park. So you can actually go see that. It's really a gorgeous tree, and it really reminded me just how young I am in my place in history, how young we all are in this place in history. And it really made me reflect on the ways that things have changed or not changed historically in the lifetime of this tree. So let me find a way to take this one down. The supplies that I have today are just washi tape. So I've got some washi tape. You can find it at Staples. You could probably order it online from a local craft store. There are a lot of places that sell very fun special washi tape, and it really brightens it up. I'm gonna go ahead and just make a whole frame. Why not? Just beautiful. So I'm gonna go ahead and name this. Now, another tree that I know is quite old, and is kind of local history. This palm tree, along with the other palm tree on the other side next to Willow Street, is very historic. It's over 100 years old. I found out about this because I went on a history walking tour with Alan Feinberg, who created the app Discover Lost Gatos, which is an app that anyone can download that has free walking tours included on it. And in those walking tours, you get to learn about the history of a lot of the old buildings downtown, as well as some of just the early history of town, which is really fascinating if you haven't already done research about the history of Los Gatos. These palms were planted by the hotel that used to occupy the whole structure that is now Main Street Burgers, Taba Taba restaurant, Willow Street, and all of those facilities there. They were planted for the grand opening of that hotel, and even though the building itself has changed and maybe gone through different construction periods, those trees are still there. This is also true of the palm trees next to St. Luke's Church on University Avenue. Those trees were planted roughly around the time the library was located there, and those palm trees are also still located there. Now, there are several types of palm trees, and I do not know very well the difference between them, so if you do, please go ahead and tell us. Do you know which type of palm tree this is? They're very tall, about 100 years old. Now this oak tree, I'm again having trouble being able to identify the type of oak, but I know that it's either a type of live oak or a white oak. And again, if you're able to help me identify that, that would be great. This one actually lives just across the street from this redwood. So if you are looking for a nice park, if you feel comfortable going out into the parks, it's got wide spaces where you can sit and relax, and you can wear your mask out and be socially distanced while hanging out at the park. Bachman Park is really full of trees, and it's a really nice little nature spot nestled into this neighborhood. Oak trees are obviously one of the most important trees here in the Bay Area. They make up a lot of our landscape in most cities and most nature areas in the Bay Area. There are oak trees and several species of oak trees, 7 or 8 or 9 different species of oak trees all around. So I really encourage you to do more research on the oak trees and the ways that they interact with the other plants in their habitat. And I think the final picture that I'm going to paste in here is the picture of this century plant. It's the only non-tree that I really focused on, besides the berry bushes. And it's because these succulents are so fascinating to me. The way that they grow for years and years without water, the way that they hold water in their leaves, the different ways that they interact with the other plants around them. It's really fascinating to me. I'm originally from Idaho, and we don't have a lot of succulents that grow naturally in the area. They're usually brought in from other places. So being in California, it's been really eye-opening the ways that you can landscape without using much water, because obviously water is a very precious resource here. And these make not only beautiful landscape pieces, but you can find them in the wild, in nature, this size when they've been untouched. Okay. So, I have put these pictures in. I wanted these pictures to guide what I do the rest of this session. I'm now going to take this opportunity to make some art. I think a very fun way to interact with your environment is to draw it. I'm not anywhere near a professional artist, but it is a really fun thing to do, a really relaxing way to engage with nature. And that's why I took several pictures, so that I would have reference points so that I could draw them. I know that Librarian Grace is very good at watercolor, but I prefer colored pencil. I feel like I have a little more control of the colored pencil, so I'm going to be coloring in with those. You're welcome to follow along or draw the things that I'm drawing or find some nature outside your window or just right outside and grab that and use that as inspiration. All right. So let's go ahead and decide on something that we can draw. I think it would be fun to start by highlighting the berries that I found. So let me grab these berries. Now I'm going to start with the blackberry bush. And the thing about the blackberry bush is that while you see these blackberries here, these leaves are actually a different type of plant. They are part of a large bush, maybe some sort of ivy, that was actually growing around the actual blackberry. And this is what the blackberry leaf looks like. But it can be confusing because when you see all of these leaves, you might think that the blackberry is growing from them. However, if you realize that if this grows any fruit, you do not want to eat the fruit off of this type of plant. You can eat the fruit off of this blackberry plant. And I took this picture specifically so that you can see the different stages of growth for a blackberry. They start green, they turn like a pinkish orange, and then they get a much darker pink red, and then they're finally ripe when they get purple. And that's the best time to eat them. So I'm going to use this for inspiration for drawing. And I'm going to take one of these blackberries. This is a very fun way to engage with nature. And I'm going to, I want this to be like the centerpiece maybe. So I'm just going to smash this down. Take off these pieces. And look at that. So I think that's a super fun way to use berries that aren't quite edible. So now that I have it painted, I can start to draw in some other features. Another plant that I really wanted to highlight was the poppy. And since I know that Catherine really wanted me to highlight some of the different flowers and things that I found, especially as they relate to history, I thought the poppy would be a great way to go. Obviously, the California poppy is the state flower. It's really gorgeous. You're really not supposed to pick them, and this was growing in a wildflower fashion in the planters outside someone's house. And so I just took a picture of it so that I could remember, and I'm going to do my best to draw it. It might not go as I planned, but that's okay, that's life. Another plant that I thought was just so beautiful were these beautiful, I think they're lupin. And you can see my friend, the bee, was here. I tried not to disturb him. He was actually, even when I got close, he didn't mind so much. So I didn't touch him. I just got close enough to snap this picture of the flower. with him on it. And Catherine specifically mentioned insects in her prompt for me, so I really wanted to appreciate that. And that also gives me a little opportunity to talk about bees. Who doesn't love bees? Obviously, they are the most important pollinator that we have, especially here in our area, but worldwide. Honeybees especially, but many bees, all bees, are really important for the role that they play in pollination. Anything that we can do to protect our pollinators is worthwhile. That includes planting more of these plants that are native and that encourage pollination. Lupins can be a bit hard to draw, and I know because I've tried, because the flowers kind of bunch up around the stem, making it kind of hard for me to tell where I'm supposed to draw the stem. I'm going to do my best here. Our beautiful little bee. Just to show you, I'm very proud of this little bee here. Hanging out with this little bee. So, there's one more thing that I want to draw, and it's especially important to the history of Los Gatos. It's not motorcycles, fruit trees. Now, I don't know that oranges are necessarily endemic here, but they grow really well here. All of Los Gatos, really, outside of the downtown area, used to be orchards. They used to be full of fruit trees. Many, many families tended those fruit trees, those orchards, for decades, very long time. Even a lot of Japanese families that were living here before World War II were owned those orchards and owned property here in Los Gatos. So I think a really great way to pay tribute to that past, to the people who really made the economy run here, is to take note of these fruit trees. I'm just going to draw one orange. I'm going to find a particularly nice orange. There we go. There we go. I think that's good for drawing. I'm gonna find now best ways to put these pieces of these plants into this journal so that they stay, and then I'll write little observations about everything that I found today. So let's watch as I do that. Now is a really great time to mention, I'm going to include a lot of resources here. Catherine really sparked my creativity here because she mentioned that I should focus on history. And I know she knew that that would really get me out there and thinking about the ways that we all impact history. I know that I personally, being who I am, being white, having the privilege that I do as a man, I feel very comfortable in a lot of outdoor spaces, but I know that that's not true for everyone. And I do not want anyone to think that it is easy to get out into nature for everybody. You know, we all have different circumstances. We've all had different experiences. Maybe we've had difficult experiences in national parks, or maybe we felt worried that we couldn't go out on a trail alone. And so I'm going to provide a lot of resources here. You can check the description here on the video for different ways that you can find to get out in nature. But also, if you're not experiencing any of these issues, this is a great way to find resources for the other people in your life who may not be as comfortable getting outdoors, so that you can share with them and start helping making sure that the outdoors are accessible to everyone in your life. It is really such a gift that we live somewhere where our parks, our plants, our trees, they're protected very well, better than in most places. And so it is very important, if we plan to continue to protect these places, that we encourage everyone to get out there, and that we provide spaces that are safe for everyone to get out there into nature. So please check out some of these resources. There's a really good recent article from The Atlantic that talks about 5 ways to make the outdoors more inclusive. And that's specifically, given everything that's happened since the death of George Floyd, it's specifically a response to the outdoor industry and the portrayal of people of color in nature, or lack of portrayal. And so it's really a great resource to start there if you're new to this idea, that maybe the outdoors aren't very easy for everyone to get out to. That's a great place to start. I've also included some information, some websites that are great for intersectionality. So Intersectional Environmentalist is a great website where they provide information on different types of communities and the ways that they experience the outdoors, and ways that they are finding to claim space in the outdoors. There's also some great influencers if you're on Instagram and just like some content that challenges you, makes you think differently. Pattie Gonia, who's a queer drag queen, they are kind of on the forefront in the queer community, the white queer community, of making sure that people have access to the outdoors. They are part of a couple of projects that help people find hiking groups, so that you can go out in nature with multiple people, feel safe, and really find ways to experience nature. There's a lot of talk about nature therapy, especially nowadays with all of the stress, what with COVID and maybe being isolated from friends and family. There's a lot of talk about nature being a great therapy. However, for people who live in the city, for people who maybe don't have stable transportation, or don't live somewhere like Los Gatos, where we do have nature block by block, it's really important for those folks to find ways to get into nature. And I feel like it's the duty of those of us who have the ability to do so to make sure that we're claiming space for them and making it easy for them to do. So please check out all these resources that I'm including here. It's a great way to get started and start a conversation, maybe just with your family or your friends. But we can all do the very minimum of our part. Okay. Now, I cannot get this into this book. It's very thick. So I'm going to draw one more thing, and it's going to be this mossy piece of bark. So I'm gonna write some notes. I really feel proud of what I've discovered. I'm going to write in some notes, and then we'll talk about them. We'll talk about what I have identified today in nature, maybe some things that I've learned. Okay, I have come up with quite a few observations, and I think that we could go through them and just ask ourselves these questions. Part of nature journaling is not so much gathering and not so much documenting, but more finding an awareness of your place with nature, and how you fit into the grand scheme of the way that the world continues to move and evolve and spin. And so one way to really center ourselves in the world, and by that I mean to find our place in the world, is to ask questions about the things that we find in nature. So I'm just going to go through. I've asked questions of myself, of these plants, all over the place. So we'll start up here. So this redwood that I found in Bachman Park, I asked, how old do redwoods live to be when they are untouched? And how many have we lost since 1884? I know that redwood logging was a huge industry for a very, very long time, until fairly recently in history. So I'm wondering how many of these redwoods that could have been this large are gone now. And how quickly do these leaves turn from green to red? Under the very same tree, I found some bright green. They're too big to fit here. I found some lighter green turning to orange, and I found dark, deep red. So I'm wondering how quickly does that happen? I also noted this bark is still very firm. So it's not that it rotted off. Someone probably peeled it off. It probably did not fall off by itself. Either a squirrel maybe gnawed it off, or a child or just a human came by and ripped it off of the bark in the park. So it's still firm. I just wanted to note that because it was likely still doing fine when it was taken off of the tree. This palm tree at the corner of Santa Cruz Avenue and Main Street. Do all palm trees reach a height that they eventually fall? If this palm is 100 years old, how much taller could it grow to be? At some point, physics, palm trees are grass. Grasses usually bend and sway. At what point does that palm tree get so big that it just has to fall? And how long does that take? Why are poppies the state flower of California? I don't know. I didn't grow up here. I didn't go to school here. So I actually never learned a lot about poppies. I've learned most of what I know about poppies since I moved to California. And so I'm wondering, why did they become the state flower? And are the yellow types, the orange types, and the red types of poppies different species? Or are they all just different types of poppy, kind of like bell peppers grow from green to red? On the orange tree, I asked, what were the original fruit trees in California before the arrival of Europeans? Fruits grow so well here because of the soil, because of the climate. But I wonder which fruits were brought here on ships, and which fruits were growing here already when Europeans arrived, and how were those original fruits used by the people, the humans who lived here, and the animals that may have gone extinct since. Blackberries taste so good, but not until they're perfectly ripe. Why? Why is that? And what is the lifespan of a berry? How long do blackberry plants live in the wild? So I'm really curious, one, because the blackberry bushes get so big, and I've seen them die before. Sometimes they, in places like Idaho, the snow comes in the winter and they disappear, but then they grow back. But I'm wondering, how long does the same plant stay alive? And also, from the time that the berry is so small and green to the time that it's perfectly ripe to the time that it falls and decomposes in the ground, what is that time span? Oak trees are fascinating to me. I didn't grow up with many oaks. And so when I see them, the way that they're so big and twisty and tangly, the way they interact with other oaks under the surface and above surface is so fascinating to me. And they make great homes for a lot of different types of creatures. And so I asked, oaks grow to be incredibly large and sprawling. What ways have they been used by humans beyond logging? What ways have oaks, whether they've naturally broken branches or their barks or even their leaves, what ways have those been used by humans? And down here, these incredibly large succulents just keep growing. They don't stop, they just get bigger and bigger and bigger. So how heavy do they become? How heavy does this giant succulent become? And is most of the weight water? I'm curious. Right. So let me pull me back up real quick. So, thank you so much for joining me. I've really learned a lot. I've really found a lot of different ways to interact with the nature that we can find here in town. I really want to encourage everyone to get out there. If that means that you find a group of friends and you go out together, you bring your family, whatever it is, it's really important to interact with nature, to breathe fresh air, even when you're wearing your mask. You're still breathing fresh air, and really just ask yourself, why is this here? This tree, this plant, this animal, this insect, why is it here? How did it get here? Should it be here? Who planted it? And how am I interacting with it? Is it useful for the community to have it here? And in what ways? And what questions can I ask myself about this plant, about this tree, this animal, so that I can learn something new about my environment and the way that I affect it. I think it's an incredible way to really engage with everything around you, to engage with your community, to find spaces that you can share with others. So thank you so much for joining me. I'm not entirely sure who's going to take this beautiful journal after me, but I'm going to leave them a very nice letter to ask them what are ways that they interact with nature day to day, and can they find any examples of the ways that humans have interacted with the nature around them that's either good or bad, and how do they address that. Thank you so much. As always, we really appreciate you coming and joining us. We really hope that you share anything that you're working on. So if you have been working on a nature journal, please take pictures, send them to us. You can email them to us at library@losgatosca.gov. You can tag us. You can use the hashtag #OurNatureStories. Any way that you can interact, we would love that. We would love to see what you're working on, if you've learned anything, if there's anything you would like to learn as we continue to get out in nature and record our experiences in our shared nature journal. Thank you so much for joining.